Hi everybody, this is Brendan here at Common Motor. That's common-motor.com on the internet. And today I'm going to show you how to deck or level your cylinder head or cylinder using some very simple tools so you get a nice flat surface for your gasket to seal. So stay tuned. So cylinder head decking, or cylinder decking. This is a term referred to a lot in the car industry and automotive industry. And what we're trying to do is make the surfaces that the head gasket seals totally flat, or at least as flat as we can make them. So if we look at our cylinder and our cylinder head right here, we've dyed the surfaces pink. And these are the surfaces we're going to level. With time and age, the surfaces can be kind of lightly warped, and there is a certain amount of warpage that is allowed in these via Honda, but we want to make sure these are as flat as possible. And as flat as they might look now, you're going to see very quickly that there's high and low spots on both of these surfaces. So we're just going to make them as flat and level as we can by taking a little bit of material off, and we're going to be basically sanding them, sanding them level. And we're going to be doing this with some very simple tools, a very simple technique, but it's effective and it works. And it's definitely something you guys can do at home. So let's set up and actually do it, because you'll see the process happen in real time and you'll see, wow, this is really easy to do. So what I have here is a chunk of a granite countertop or quartz countertop left over from a construction job. This one happens to have a lip on it, so it sits up against the bench really square. This is the most important part right here, because this thing is super level and super flat when they make this stuff. So this is going to be our zero reference mark to actually flatten the cylinder head on. So we're going to actually be sanding it on the surface right here. You can use the machine surface on something like a table saw or a planer, but this works very well. They actually sell granite chunks made specifically for doing things like this, for doing layout work, especially guys who used to make patterns and do castings and stuff. This stuff is really important. This works good enough for what we're doing on these heads here. So again, it has to be a flat piece of something like this. A big thick piece of glass will also work. If I'm talking like thick glass, would also do the same thing. It needs to be probably like ½ inch or greater thickness of glass. That's just really level things that you can find sitting around. But you can probably get this for free if you ask the right person. Got some wet dry sandpaper here. I'm going to use a T20. I don't like to go too aggressive on this. I'd rather be gentle and take my time and make sure I don't take off too much material, but definitely using the wet dry stuff and using some spray adhesive here. I'm going to glue the sandpaper to this, and that's going to be our surface for actually doing the leveling work. All right, sandpaper is glued down to the granite. It just takes a minute for that stuff to kind of tack up and dry. I'm going to put some oil on here. You could also use water, I guess, because it acts as a lubricant. But I'm just going to use a little bit of this Marvel Mystery Oil. It's pretty thin. I'm going to try to spread it out on the paper here as best I can. So what we've done here on the head is we have dyed the surface with layout dye. And what you're going to see is as we sand it, you're going to see the high and low spots. The high spots are going to show up as shiny aluminum. The low spots are going to stay this kind of pink dye here. You don't have to use a layout dye. You can use something simple like a Sharpie that's a different color and color the surface area to get your contrast. In fact, you really don't even need to use the dye or the Sharpie altogether, because as you sand it, you're going to see very quickly the high and low spots, because the high spots will be nice and shiny aluminum, the low spots will be kind of the dull gray aluminum. But for the camera, high contrast here, we're going to use the pink layout dye so you guys can see it a lot more visible on the video. But this is a good technique. I like to use a layout die. But again, a Sharpie, it works just fine. Just kind of color the surface. Put some more down on the paper, and I'm literally just going to take the cylinder head. I'm going to drop it on the paper here. I'm going to be sanding it back and forth. And I'm going to be using some level, even pressure back and forth. I'll flip it around, and we'll take a look at it. And I don't need to take off very much, so I just put it on the paper here. I'm just going to go. I'm letting the weight of the cylinder kind of, I'm not like pushing down on it hard. I'm just trying to let it sit here on the deck. Nice and level. I'll turn it around. Now, depending on the size of the part and how much space you have to work with, this pattern back and forth may not be the best for you. On small parts, you can do like a figure 8 type pattern on the paper here, and it'll keep things smooth. And this is a really old school technique. I was taught this by old school hot rodder on how to do this stuff. So, yeah, just a little bit on the surface here. Let's take a look. Let's get a rag here and wow, this cylinder head is remarkably level. Look at that. Wipe all that down there. Okay, you can zoom in a little bit. You can see our high and low spots. This is obviously nice and shiny over here and bright, and the ends here were a little bit low. I'm not surprised at the very end of the casting. And right here in the middle area, by the cam chain tensioner, we still have a low spot. You can see all these little dark marks and everything. So we're going to keep going until we get this whole casting looking nice and bright like it is around here. That way we know it's level. But overall, this, I can tell you right now, this cylinder head's in really good, or the cylinder is in really good shape. But you never know. I mean, sometimes you'll deck it and you're like, wow, I got to really take some material off of it. But this one happens to be really good. I'm going to take a little bit more oil and try to get some of the residue off the paper here. And we're going to keep going, and then we'll do the same thing with the cylinder head. So let me do some more passes, and let's see what happens. Yeah, so check. Now just do a little bit more. We're getting better. We need to still go. We still have some dark spots here. So do a couple passes and shake your work often. And you can try to clean the paper off using some more oil. In this case, I'm using a little WD-40 to kind of keep things loose, keep those particles moving around, and keep this thing kind of lubed up as well. Again, we're just trying to take a little bit more material off and get those dark spots taken away. I'll flip it over this way now. Better. Not quite there yet. Almost there. We'll see if we can get most of this cleaned up, and see the ends cleaned up already. Almost everything on this half is done, but we'll get this little area cleaned up, especially right here. That's where the head gasket's going to want to seal around the cylinder, so we'll make sure we get that nice and cleaned up. But you guys can start to see that even without the die, you can see the high and low spots on the head here. So on the surface, keep going. We'll do the cylinder head, and we'll show you the final results. Our decks are done after some careful sanding. As you can see that the surfaces are super clean. We got off all the red ink, the pink dye. The high spots are down on both the cylinder and the cylinder head. And we even went as far as touching up the intake ports as well. You can do that while you have the sandpaper set up. Get those guys a little bit level. And that should be done. This engine should be ready to go back together with the head gasket without a problem. Last thing you're going to do with these before you actually put the engine together is to wash them very well. I recommend using hot soapy water and just dish detergent, and dry them well. And on the cylinders, any pieces that are iron, give them a coat of WD-40 to keep them from flash rusting. We want to make sure we get all that residue that we've been sanding off of these pieces so the engine goes together clean. Other than that, that's the process. Very simple. It can be done for other types of machine surfaces you're working on, side covers, other case castings coming together. Just important not to take off too much material. Do them in small increments, use fine sandpaper, and check your work frequently. So that wraps up the decking process. This is Brendan with Common Motor, common-motor.com on the internet. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. And, of course, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. We'll see you next time. Voila.